Good morning. We're here, as we are most mornings, hopefully in your home, and thank you for letting us into your living room. We're trying to provide just some inspiration, some hope, Jesus in the morning with our devotionals. And each morning we bring something to you from the Word of God. And my guest here, Dennis Legg, who is one of our elders. We're trying to introduce our elders to the congregation. So Dennis, thank you for being here with us. And Dennis was a missionary in Poland for 15 years, so don't hold that against him. But and he also teaches our Bible study on Friday morning, which has been great, and it's so much fun to see all the guys show up on Zoom these days.
It is. It's been fun.
So Dennis, with that, tell us what you'd like to share with us this morning and bring it into the homes of people.
Well, I thought about sharing, just by way of encouragement, all of the promises of the Bible, but there are 4,000 or 5,000 of them, so I narrowed it down a little bit.
We don't have that much time.
Yeah, actually, I've read different figures. As are there 4,000 promises in the Bible or 7,000? But anyway, it needed to be eliminated. So, but I just wanted to pick a few that I think just they encourage me. They give me hope.
Great.
They're good reminders of just some of the things that the Lord has said. Some of these that I'll share, and I picked 5, are, I think, technically promises. A few others might just be statements of truth that have come from the lips of the Lord to encourage us, to remind us and encourage us about what's available to us and His care for us and all that.
Great.
So we got a handful. I picked 5.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah, let's work. Let's walk through them and see what we get.
First one, Psalm 23, and there the statement would be that the Lord never abandons us or leaves us alone, even in the dark valleys of life. And for a lot of folks, for me, this whole thing, this epidemic thing or pandemic thing, it's been kind of annoying. It has not been traumatic. It has not been a dark valley. I haven't lost a family member. I haven't gotten sick. I haven't lost a job. For a lot of people, this may, certainly is a valley experience right now. And a couple of things in this psalm, just the very fact that the Lord is my shepherd. Ancient Near Eastern shepherds, they never left the sheep. They were with them always. And David had that certainty, and he rejoiced at that. And then I think it's down to verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, speaking to the Lord. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So just, as with each of these 5 passages, they're well known, but just the reminder of the fact that we are not alone. We'll never leave, we'll never be left, we'll never be forsaken. We'll never be abandoned. And even if we're going through the toughest of times, these weeks or these months, the Lord is with us. He's with us and He cares, and that's critically important.
It's interesting here, isn't it, that in one verse, 2, He says, He makes me lie down, and then this verse you just read, verse 4, even though I walk. So it seems to encompass all of our activity in our life, and rather than lying down in the valley, we're walking through it. It means life is progressing, and it is at time darkness. And obviously we're in one of those times, right, where people are trying to figure out what next steps are. We're trying to figure out what and how we're going to open up at any given time. One of the things I've been really reminded of in this, because we're not able to get together, is that the church isn't a building. And we need to be reminded of that, because now we have an opportunity to reach out to people because of the isolation, whether it's by phone or by note. Or on Monday, there was 20-something cars around Chuck Marshall's house wishing him a happy birthday. Even the Sisters Folk Festival went into the neighborhood last night, and somebody was playing music just to bring some encouragement. So it's interesting how in these moments of need, many people rise to the occasion, and certainly as followers of Jesus, we get to be the church. So that's a wonderful thing.
Great, good. Second, again, a well-known passage in Matthew 11, the last couple of verses in the chapter there. We can come to the Lord when we're weary and heavy laden, and He will give us rest. That is absolutely a promise. And, we have the peace of God, the peace of Christ, and rest promised from the Lord. I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of people who don't need peace regularly, who are not experiencing peace. We all get weary, we all get heavy laden, and there's a lot of heavy laden people these days. Many people in our church, no doubt, and perhaps even us to some extent. Matthew 11, 28 to 30, come to me. This is a command, it's instructions from The Lord, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden. I will give you rest. Command followed by a promise. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle, lowly in heart. You will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. And again, just encouragement, hope, reminder of what's available to us. One of the other days you were talking with somebody in the Word, it might have been Bruce, and the word source came up. The Lord is the source of peace and rest, and we need it desperately.
Yeah.
And it's available. We just got to do what he says. We got to come to him. We got to call upon him.
Yeah.
We've got to cast our cares on him.
And I love that, the word learn there, because I think in this time, like all times, we get to continually be learners, lifelong learners, we would say. And that piece, I think sometimes we find ourselves in our relationship with the Lord, a relationship with other people, moments of thinking we've arrived, and yet none of us have arrived. I'm always reminded of what Paul says when he says, I have not yet apprehended that which I've been apprehended by. And I think that there's this opportunity for us that is a tremendous amount of hope, because it says that as long as I take the posture of learning, the infinite Jesus and the finite Steve have this amazing opportunity for a transaction that I can keep growing. So I can never settle. And needless to say, in this time, darkness, brokenness, difficulty forces me to continually ask questions and be a learner. So
you're suggesting that this coming and learning, it's ongoing, isn't it?
Oh, it's ongoing. And even in this situation, so I would hope everybody that's listening at home would recognize that, it's a difficult time, but it's also a teachable moment. What is God trying to say to us in these moments? We've been walking through James, right, for the last 4 or 5 months, and James begins by saying, count it all joy when you fall into different trials, because there's something about it that presses us into Jesus, that makes us a people of, hopefully, character and maturity and faith. And anyway, so come and learn of me, and that's beautiful.
Thanks. Romans 8:31 would be a third promise or truth statement. And basically, God is for us, and I need reminded of that. The verse says, or just the part of the verse that I wanted to read, it's put in the form of a question. If God is for us, who can be against us? And it's put in the form of a question, but it's really a statement. And Paul goes on to say all of the things that cannot separate us from the love of Christ and the love of God. 2 different sections there that have a number of verses in there. I mean, is that good news or what? God is for us.
Yeah.
He's in us, he's with us, and he's for us.
Yeah.
He's on our side in this. I mean, we can have God as our enemy. 1 Peter says how to have God opposed to us. I'm not recommending this. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. I mean, if we can choose to have God opposed to us, it'd be foolish to do it.
Yeah.
Just choose the path of pride.
Yeah.
But he's for us. He's with us.
Yeah.
He's got our backs.
Yeah.
He hasn't stopped caring for us.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty remarkable statement that encourages me.
And I think, unfortunately, sometimes we say, God is for us if I pray an hour a week, or God is for us if I go to church every Sunday.
That's conditional,
God,
isn't it?
yeah, and that's not what this is saying. I mean, God is for us, and we know that because he didn't spare his own son, but through him freely gives us all things. And I think if we could rest in that statement that God is for us, because I think there's a lot of theology that causes us to think that there are times when God isn't for us. But if God was for us before we were ever created, if salvation is by grace through faith and not of works, if it's at the price of Jesus' own life, then I can rest in that love that is so unconditional, knowing that God is for us. And I'm afraid even thoughts like that we've heard theologically, that God turned his back on Jesus, I think that's erroneous theology. I don't think God turned his back on Jesus. I think the cry of my God, why hast thou forsaken me, is the cry of an unbelieving Adam, which Jesus fully took on at the cross. Because they take that statement out of Habakkuk, a third of a verse in a chapter, when the whole chapter says that God is against sin. God is too holy to look at sin and do nothing about it. Well, he did something about it. It's called Calvary. And so When I think of God turning his back on sin, I don't see Jesus turning his back on the woman at the well. I don't see Jesus turning his back at the woman caught in adultery. I don't see Jesus turning his back on Peter who, denied him. If God be for us, who can be against us? And that's such a promise. I love that statement.
And the answer is no one and nothing.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
Paul spells that out
Yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
10 or 12 verses
Yeah.
of the chapter there.
That's absolutely true. Good promise.
Fourth, I don't think this is a promise, but I'd call it a truth statement. And that's simply this. We will never understand all of the Lord's thoughts and ways. And that might drive us crazy because we feel like we're entitled, we should know, we should be able to understand everything that the Lord does and everything that the Lord thinks. We'll never understand all the Lord's thoughts and ways. I say that because he tells us that. Isaiah 55, again, well-known verses. I'll read them. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. I mean, to me, that it should eliminate, it doesn't in my life always, but it should eliminate any hope or expectation or sense that, I don't understand what's going on. Lord, you need to explain it to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to understand. I mean, he's doing 1,000 things in every situation probably that we don't know, we can't see, to paraphrase a John Piper quote. And another verse in Isaiah, same kind of thing, 40 verse 28. I think it's the only time in the Bible the word inscrutable is used. It's not a word we use a lot, is it?
Inscrutable.
My definition of inscrutable is unfigure-outable. I'm not sure that's a word. 40:28, great. It's a great verse. God's understanding is unsearchable or inscrutable, depending on the translation that you read. We are not going to understand everything he does or how he does it or why he does it. And he's apparently, as the Lord of heaven and earth, feels no compulsion, no obligation to explain his thoughts and his ways to us.
It would be funny if that wasn't true, then Jesus' statement about come learn of me would be needless, right? But the fact that we do need to learn recognizes that there's something more than we currently have. But it rubs us the wrong way because I think it rubs our egos the wrong way. From the beginning, right, we want to be sovereign. The temptation in the garden is, I want to be like God, and the devil says, you can be like God without God. That's the common temptation I think we all face.
Yeah.
So to put ourselves in a position where I don't know all things. And I think, if you go back to Greek mythology and the polytheistic worldview, many of those deities were just amplified humanity, and it was just projections of the best and worst of human beings, and that's what people worshipped. And I'm grateful that the God that we have is not an amplified human, is the right kind of human. But it's a wonderful thought to know there's so much more for me to come and know and learn, and then God has it in control. And faith is the way that I begin to understand that.
This is simply saying that we don't know everything. We do know a lot. The Lord has revealed much to us about his character, his attributes, his ways, his works.
Yeah.
And we know from all that he can be trusted. He can be fully trusted. And I think, whether we're in a time like this or whatever kind of situation we're in, whether we understand what's going on or don't understand what's going on, that ought to drive us to trust because we know who he is. He doesn't change.
Yeah.
Even if we don't get it all. And there's a lot I don't get.
Yeah. That's a big difference because you think every time we move into any arena, we bring our own biases. We bring our own belief system. Even most recently as we're watching this pandemic, right? You have some scientists that are saying this, some scientists saying that, and really you would think, well, the facts are the facts. But the truth of the matter is you bring your bias to the facts. You bring your presuppositions to the facts. And, we used to say in a world that I worked in for a while, everybody has data. It's what you do with the data that determines whether you're going to make a difference or not. So the very fact that we're called to be people of faith, that gives us this sense of there's so much more to learn, and that I'm okay with God being God, him being sovereign, and me not. And because when I try to be sovereign, I always get in trouble. Yeah.
We easily confuse our roles, don't we?
I don't know about you out there. Maybe
It's
sometimes
just the
you
two of
feel
us.
like that.
I'm sure it's just us.
Maybe at times you feel sovereign and you want her to call you Lord, but that's not going to work.
All right, last one. We are headed for a remarkable eternity. And just, again, we're not alone, we're not abandoned. The Lord's rest is available to us. We're told to come to it. God is for us, He's on our side. We're not going to understand everything he says and does. And then just thinking about the future, just a couple verses from Revelation 21 and 22. Remarkable future, just thinking down the road. I mean, let's have a long view of this. We will get through this. The Lord cares for us all the way through it. Revelation 21, a couple verses at the beginning of the chapter. John says, I heard a loud voice, let's see where, verse 3. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them. They will be his people. God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death shall be no more, neither shall there be any mourning, nor crying, nor pain, for the former things have passed away. Those are the things, the former things, John looking back, those are our present, that's our present reality, some of that stuff. But those things, the day is coming in the providence of God when that will be in the past. Over to chapter 22, verse 3, no longer will there be anything accursed, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, his name will be on their foreheads. Night will be no more. They will need no light of lamp or the sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they shall reign forever and ever. I mean, just looking forward to what's ahead. I mean, all this is a description of the new heavens, new earth, new Jerusalem, and all that, and we could go on and on here.
Yeah.
But that's where we're headed. Ultimately, our citizenship is in that city, not here. We are just passing through, as the old hymn says.
Yeah.
So let's look forward to that too, knowing at the same time that the Lord will sustain us and care for us through these difficult days.
And what I love about, especially those two chapters, is the sense of the restoration of all things. In many Eastern ways of thinking, that the ultimate reality is nothingness, where one becomes one with the universe and the material world goes away. Because in many of those belief systems, the material world is a part of the problem. It leads us to desire and desire to ego, and it gets in the way of that reality. But the gospel is so different. The gospel says, no, this material world was created by God. It is groaning, as we all are, in these bodies of death, but one day God is going to bring full restoration. And certainly living in Sisters, Oregon, where it's so beautiful, can't imagine how much more beautiful heaven will be. But having been by some streams, recognizing there's one that's going to come out from the throne of God that will be clear, and there's trees on both sides, and the leaves will be the healing of the nations. There will be fruit every month. I mean, it's just this beautiful picture. And not just that, but the restoration of our relationships. Wherever there was pain or doubt or difficulty or heartache or hurt or maybe a maligning statement, it's not going to be there anymore. And we're truly going to be transparent and authentic with one another. I can't even imagine what that's going to be like, but I think I want that so much. The other day I was writing a chapter in a little book that I'm writing for my kids, and the question was, what do you worry about? And I wrote at the end of the chapter, I worry that I didn't love my children well when they were young, because the Jesus I know today is different than the Jesus I knew when I was raising them. The Jesus then was harsher Jesus, more controlling Jesus. The Jesus today is just sweeter, more gentle,
I'm thinking
more loving.
that you changed, not the Lord.
Yeah. That's a good thought there. That's probably true.
Am I going out on a limb to suggest that?
No, that's probably true. But my understanding, right, is it's like that verse. His thoughts and my thoughts are not the same, but I'm going to keep learning. So we're going to tie all these verses together, right? I'm going to finally rest in him because he's my shepherd, Psalm 23, and I shall not want. And the truth of that is I'm going to keep learning of him because whatever it is that I think I need, he's the answer for. And knowing that, if he's for me, who can be against me? And I can be confident that if he was willing to give up his own son for me, how much more is he going to provide for me now that I've entered into the family? And all of that isn't even as great as the reality of knowing there's so many more thoughts that God has that I don't understand, but I know he's good and he's beautiful, and I can truly understand that, all leading to this beautiful restoration of all things. So those are great verses. So what would you want to say to those who are listening after you've kind of brought those verses? How would you want people to respond to that this day?
I think you summarized it just beautifully. I mean, everything we need in terms of care from the Lord, provision from the Lord, we have. It's available to us. He can be trusted.
Yeah.
Let's trust him.
Yeah.
I mean, whether we're having a mountaintop experience, and most of us aren't these days, but whether we're a peak or a valley or somewhere out in the plain, he can be trusted. Let's choose to trust him.
Awesome. So you're listening this morning to us. The challenge is that we would love for you, read Psalm 23, and then go read Matthew 11, 28 through 30, and then embrace Romans 8, 31, but read it all the way to the end of the chapter, verse 38 and 39. And then come back to the reality, as good as all that is, we've got a God whose thoughts are not our thoughts, whose ways are not our ways, and it's better than we could ever ask or think or imagine. And ultimately, the restoration of all things will be exactly what Revelation 21 and 22 is. So have a great day. Hopefully, you'll get to be around some of your loved ones, and have a great one. Bye-bye.